You're not avoiding them. You're avoiding a part of you. You think you're avoiding them, their energy, their chaos, their attitude. But look closer. You're not avoiding them. You're avoiding the part of you they activate, the one you buried, the one you silenced, the one you exiled because someone once made you feel it didn't belong. You don't hate selfish people. You hate that you were once punished for wanting something for yourself. You don't hate anger. You hate that you were taught your rage made you unlovable. You don't hate people who speak up. You hate that your silence was once mistaken for virtue. That's shadow. Not evil. Not wrong. Just repressed code still running in the dark. And every time it gets triggered, you don't deal with it. You project it. Onto others. Onto yourself. Onto everything but the root. You think you've outgrown it, but you've only outran it. And now, it shows up as the overreaction, the self-sabotage, the person you swear you're not like, but keep becoming when no one's watching. You don't heal shadow by fixing it. You heal it by finally turning around and saying, I see you. I don't need to run. Let's begin where the silence started. Shadow isn't evil. It's the part of you that got rejected. You weren't born divided. You were whole, curious, director, alive. Then it happened. You said something bold. They called it too much. You got angry. They called it bad behavior. You needed attention. They labeled it selfish. And one by one, you took those parts of yourself, the loud, the honest, the wild, and locked them away. Not because they were wrong, but because they were unwelcome. That's how shadow is born. Not from sin, but from survival. Shadow isn't evil. It's the version of you that was once punished. So you hid it to stay accepted. And the hiding worked. You got quieter, softer, more agreeable. But inside, a part of you froze. Not dead, just waiting. To be seen, to be unshamed, to be reintegrated. That's why shadow work isn't about fighting darkness. It's about facing what you've labeled as not me. When really, it's the most honest part you were never allowed to show. You don't hate your shadow. You're afraid of what it might do if you let it speak again. But silence doesn't solve it. It strengthens it. And eventually, it leaks. In the overreaction, in the passive aggression, in the triggers that make no sense until you trace them back to the part you still don't want to own. You call yourself calm, but it's repression. You call yourself strong, but it's armor. You call yourself kind, but it's a performance because you were once punished for being honest. Shadow isn't shameful. It's just unprocessed memory trying to return to the system. You don't need to fix it. You just need to let it come home without dressing it up or shutting it down. And the first step is spotting when it shows up. Not outside you, but inside your reactions to others. Let's make that visible next. Signs your shadow is running the show. You think your shadow is hidden, but it's not. It shows up every day. Not in who you are, but in what you avoid. Here's how you know your shadow is running the show. 1. You overreact to traits you've disowned. You hate arrogance, but deep down, you're afraid of your own power. You judge people for being needy, but part of you still aches to be taken care of. Whatever triggers you most is often the part of you you've silenced hardest. 2. You're proud of how in control you are. You never cry, never raise your voice, always composed. But it's not strength. It's fear of what might surface if you let go for even 1 second. Your control is often a defense against the shadow you don't trust. 3. You over-identify with being the good one, always helpful, always forgiving. always the peacemaker. But behind the kindness is exhaustion. And behind the exhaustion is a voice that's never been allowed to say, "I need too." 4. You use judgment to avoid recognition. You call others fake because you're afraid to be seen. You call others dramatic because you've buried your own chaos. You don't reject them. You reject the part of you that looks like them. 5. You're easily triggered by what you would never do. You don't just disagree. You react. Hard, fast, personally, because your shadow still lives there, and your nervous system knows it. This isn't about shame. It's about recognition. Because until you admit that the part you hate in others once belonged to you, you'll keep calling your triggers problems instead of messages. Let's learn how to read them next. What you reject internally always returns. Externally, what you suppress doesn't disappear. It adapts. It finds new ways to surface, not through thought, but through reaction, projection, pattern. You silence your anger. So it shows up in your stomach, your tone, your resentment you can't explain. You bury your envy, so it leaks into judgment, cynicism, subtle sabotage. You deny your fear, so you become hyper-controlling without knowing why. The shadow doesn't die just because you ignore it. It evolves until it returns in someone else's body. That's the trick. You don't escape your shadow. You outsource it. You push it out of your identity. And the universe hands it back as a person you can't stand. You meet your rejection in other people's traits, other people's actions, other people's presence. And you think, I just don't vibe with them. But it's not them. It's the part of you they woke up. And until you reclaim it, you won't just react. You'll orbit around the same dynamics, the same emotions, the same uncomfortable mirrors wearing different faces. This isn't karma, it's coding. And your nervous system will keep projecting what your identity refuses to absorb. That's why healing doesn't mean becoming someone new. It means becoming whole again. And wholeness starts when you stop exiling the pieces that never stopped speaking. You don't need to act them out. You don't need to express them explosively. You just need to stop denying they exist. That's how you stop fighting shadows and start integrating them. Let's walk that process next. Shadow Integration Protocol. 3 tactical steps to reclaim what you rejected. You don't integrate shadow by healing it. You integrate it by facing it, without performance. Not to forgive, not to fix, just to stop pretending it's not there. Here's how Cold Mind does shadow work. 3 tactical steps, no spiritual fluff, just pattern exposure and ownership. 1. Spot the projection right here. What kind of person triggers you most? What qualities in others make your skin crawl? Now flip it. Where inside you does that still live? The part that gets jealous, that wants control, that craves attention, that feels weak, angry, needy, dramatic. You can't reclaim what you won't name. And whatever you deny, you will project. Over and over, until it owns you. 2. Sit with the trait. Now write it down. I reject the part of me that trodo. Don't explain it. Don't justify it. Just look. What would happen if you let that part speak? Without acting on it? Without trying to silence it? Not everything needs to be expressed, but everything needs to be acknowledged. This is how the system stabilizes. Recognition without rejection. 3. Reclaim without embodying. You don't need to become your shadow. You just need to stop pretending it's not you. Reclaiming means, yes, that trait exists in me. No, I don't need to suppress it. And no, I don't need to act it out either. It becomes a tool, a perspective, a dimension, not a dictator. This is shadow integration. Spot the projection. Sit with the trait, reclaim it calmly. No guilt, no narrative, just space for the rejected to rejoin the system. That's not regression. That's system upgrade. Let's close this loop. Final message. You're not broken. You're just split. You've seen someone like this. They don't need to prove anything. Don't react to triggers. Don't defend a perfect image. They're not untouchable. They're integrated. Because once you reclaim the part of you you spent years running from, the triggers collapse, the overreactions quiet, the shame softens, the judgment fades. They didn't heal their shadow. They stopped lying about it. They said, "Yes, that's me too," and didn't flinch. This is the turning point. You're not broken. You're just divided, split between who you were allowed to be and who you still are underneath. Shadow work isn't a purge. It's a return to the version of you that stopped performing and started owning. Not perfectly, but consciously. You don't need to be whole. You just need to stop hiding the pieces you locked in the dark just to be accepted. And now, you don't need permission anymore. You need clarity, containment, command. In the next video, we'll dive into emotional autonomy, how to stop outsourcing your safety to the reactions, approval, or validation of others. Subscribe. Reclaim the pieces. Stand whole. Don't perform. Don't divide. Integrate. And move clean.